There we go. Can you hear me? Howdy, everybody. How are we all? Can everyone hear me? And they're gone. I'm just gonna paint by myself for a moment until I get someone on here. Okay. We're having a bit of technical difficulties here for some reason. On my end, it's showing that we've got no viewers, and apparently it's showing four. So, to you four that are watching, welcome. Today, I'm going to be talking about what it's like to be a colorblind miniature painter. Um, I'm not going to claim at any point that I am an amazing painter or that anything that I have to say is the be all and all. This is going to be mostly all about my experience and the experience of some of the people that I've got in the group that I run with Shoshi called Colourwise. It's for support of miniature painters who are colorblind. And friends, you don't have to be colorblind in order to join. But there is a few things you need to take into account, but we'll talk about that later. Um, I'll go over the basics of what it is to be colorblind, what causes colorblindness, and how it can affect the way that we paint miniatures. Um, Colorblindness affects about 8% of all males and only about 0.3% females. This is because it's carried predominantly by your mother in the X chromosome, which means it's a lot rarer for a female to get it because she's got a lot less chance when it comes to whether or not she gets that chromosome from her mother, which is passed on from the father to the mother. Um, I mean, the mother's father. So if your grandfather was colorblind, you've got a good chance of being colorblind. That's my understanding. I'm not going to claim that I know everything about colorblindness or how it's caused, but there's a lot of videos out there on YouTube. Just look up colorblindness and you'll find all sorts of stuff that will have a lot more information and more in depth than I can explain today. Um, Inside your eyeball itself, it has two different types of color receptors. Those receptors are commonly known as rods or cones. In a human's eyeball, we have three different types of cones that detects different wavelengths of color. Um, the most common color blindness either has one of those cones missing or one of them is dulled, so we can still see the color, we just can't see it nearly as well. For example, if your red node or red cone is missing, you're going to have a lot more difficulty seeing red. If it's missing, you won't see it at all. Your brain will try to compensate for the color that it knows is there, but you still won't be able to see it. Whereas if your red cone is dulled, you'll still see the color red, but it will be a lot harder to distinguish between with greens, for example. Red-green deficiency is the most common type of colorblindness. Um, there are several other types, but I'm not going to go into those because they don't affect me. I'm red-green deficient. I don't have a cone missing. I just have a dulled cone. Um, just give me a moment here. Sorry, I just made a mess. All right. Um, Where was I? I have no idea where I was. That's all right. The fact that color blindness affects mostly males, and only 8% of males, we as colorblind men have a lot of difficulty growing up, in particular, because when we first find out that we're colorblind, we don't even realize that we're colorblind. And the world's schooling doesn't seem to have any infrastructure at all or support in mind when it comes to kids that are colorblind. I remember when I was little, I had such a difficult time in art classes, and my teacher couldn't understand why I would get so angry. Um, she didn't realize that I was struggling because I couldn't see what she was talking about. I couldn't understand what was being talked about um, because I would mix up my reds and greens. When I first became a miniature painter, when I first picked up paints and minis, I was probably, 14, I think. Um, and got a good friend, Aidan Coford, here in Australia, who some of you may or may not know. And we used to paint together all the time, every weekend. And I went over to his place one day, finished my whole army, was so proud of it, until he turned around and asked me why I had painted my guys curry poo brown and highlighted with bright orange and shaded with dark green. I had no idea. I thought I was doing a really cool color in the way that I was doing my minis. I thought my whole army's done now. Excellent. Looks amazing. And then it turned out that they were ghastly. I I couldn't tell. I had no idea until someone else pointed it out to me. I knew I was colorblind. Unfortunately, I only had a very small number of paints, so I had to mix, and mixing is the bane of my existence. I cannot. I have such a difficult time mixing because the colors that color efficient painters can see, I can't. I know they exist. I can see some of them. If they're by themselves, I can see them. But when it comes to making the color, I will think, oh, yes, that looks excellent. I've done really, really well there. Go to stick it on, and my partner will ask me, why have I gone with that color? What do you mean? And it turns out the color that I'm thinking I've created is completely wrong. Nowhere near what I want it to be, and it's going to completely destroy whatever effect that I'm trying to make. Sure, I've only painted about 30 miniatures so far since I started painting again after I quit when I was about 16. But as I'm learning and trying to experiment with different things, having this impairment essentially can make things extremely difficult. Most miniature painters that I know in a group that I host that are colorblind have some sort of technique to try and get around the issues that they've got. For myself, I usually use recipes. I'll go with, for example, with my greys, and I know it's grey. You wouldn't think that being red green deficient that I would have difficulty with it, which I don't. But I'm so used to having recipes that I feel uncomfortable stepping out of that little circle to try and paint or mix or do something other than using a recipe. So, for example, here I've got as my base Mechanicus Standard Grey by Games Workshop. Then I use Dawnstone by Games Workshop, and then Administratum Grey by Games Workshop. and usually a white or a black at the very base. But having a step by step where I know, because I know what is labeled on the paint and I know what's going to come out in the end, makes me feel a lot more comfortable. And hello, we got, is this
That's me.
Brandon?
I'm tech supporting this, trying to figure out what's going on.
Ah,
It shows that there are a few people on the internet channel.
yeah, apparently it says that some people are watching, but I don't know. I'm going to pretend that they are. Hopefully we can work out what's going on so I can answer some questions instead of just waffling to myself. That would be nice. Because it's a bit difficult trying to just talk about what it's like to be colorblind without having people there to ask those difficult questions. Because there's not a lot to say, really. It's just something that I've learnt to cope with. Um, it does have some difficult areas where I know that I'm never really going to be able to get past it, like mixing paint. I'm never going to be able to mix paint well. Never, ever, ever, ever. I will try. I have tried. I'm always going to keep trying to mix paint, but I'm just never going to be able to do it well. I know that some people can essentially re-educate their eyes if they have a dulled cone, a dulled cone rather than a missing cone. Whereas a missing cone, it's just not going to happen. You won't see that color, you won't see that red, or you won't see that green, which is very difficult for some people to come to terms with. I know some people aren't bothered by it, and that's excellent. The brain is an amazing thing, and I know that it can learn to compensate. Um, it's just learning to do so is difficult, to my understanding. I don't have that particular type of impairment, so I can't speak on that, unfortunately. Hopefully, at some point today, when we can get this working properly, we'll have someone who does have a missing cone that will be able to actually come on and speak about it. Just my apologies, just got messages and etc. from tech support trying to work out what the hell is going on. Please excuse me. And I'm back. Alright, we've got issue after issue here currently. All right, get back on topic. Now, I find when it comes to being a miniature painter who's colorblind, I don't have a lot of difficulty learning techniques, anything like that. I know that some people do. I'm not one of those people. Um, I'm I'm not an amazing painter. I can give you that much. But I'm slowly learning. But I know that some people have difficulty with, for example, blending, that kind of thing, because of the fact that they struggle to see the colors that they're using. Um, but with that said, for example, on our group, we have someone who painted this amazingly realistic tank, and at no point could he even see the colors that he was blending. He couldn't see what he was using. He couldn't see um, any of the colors. He couldn't even see how they were blending properly. Yet he's done an amazingly realistic tank. So these little issues that we have can be overcome. It's just most people don't have an understanding of what it is to be colorblind. There's many apps that you can download that claim to help, you know, convert a photo to what it's like to be colorblind. It can give you an idea, those apps, of what it could be like, but I find that every single individual has a completely different way of seeing these colors. And that's what I find can make it so difficult. We're all different. We all see differently of what we're looking at. Um, the colors that I find the most difficult are usually pinks and purples. Um, some tones of oranges and yellows. I'm technically red green deficient, and when you're not colorblind, it's hard to understand why I would struggle with these other colors when I'm red green deficient. I usually, when it comes to red and green, I see them fine when they're by themselves. When I look at something that's red and green, I may not see any of the red when I first look at it. If they're bold, I can see them eventually. Um, with some things, there's actually really trippy effects that happen with my eyes. For example, here in Australia, there's an orange juice company with a very plain green tree as their logo with orange dots. For me, at first, all I can see is a green tree. I look at it for a little while, and all of a sudden, the tree goes black, and all of these orange dots come out of nowhere. And then it'll reverse. The dots will go black, tree will go bold green, and eventually it'll go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth like this until the whole tree, all the oranges are all black. I don't know why that happens. Someone hopefully one day can explain it to me, but it does. So when I'm looking at these colors, I can still see them because I have that red or that green cone. I just have a dulled cone. So I have difficulty distinguishing between these colors because the wavelengths of light, unfortunately, I don't have a board here that I can try to explain things to everyone with. But the wavelengths of light, when they're split into three, we've got blue, which sits over here by itself on the graph of the wavelengths. Then we have red and green that actually lap over each other for quite some time. When you have these deficiencies, you may struggle to see the red, though you can still see it because you still have that receptor. Because it's dull, that wavelength is smaller. It is closer to the green. So where they overlap becomes the higher percentage of what you can see. So you struggle to see these colors. when it comes to all other colors like blues, purples, pinks, which is like this purple that's separating, you can see the color, but the problem is the fact that you struggle to see the red in the purple. You struggle to see the green in a color. Because of that, it can make it really difficult to determine what you're looking at. For example, I've got here Warlord Purple by Vallejo, game color. To me, if you had to ask me what color is it when looking at the bottle, I would guess pink. When everyone else, no, it's definitely a purple. Me, no, it's a dark pink. Because I struggle to see what these colors are, these tones, these hues of color. Because I struggle with it, it makes things quite difficult. Because if I'm talking to a painter and I go, oh, the the cloak on my Wartborns, it looks good. I'm not happy with this, that, and the other thing. Can you give me some tips? Or what do you think I should do differently? They'll usually go, oh, well, if you mix a little bit of blue with this and that, a little bit extra of this, you should be able to come to a really good tone that you can use for the shading or the highlights or the base color. As a miniature painter who's colorblind, that's all French to me. I have no idea what they're talking about. I have done a lot on color theory. I've tried to educate myself on color theory. I understand color theory when it's on a computer, but when it's being applied to miniatures, for a lot of it, I struggle because I can't see what they're talking about. Now, okay, I know that I need to have, you know, I can shade it with this color because it's in this position on the color wheel, which I do. I own a color wheel, even though I don't really use it. But I can think about it and go, yes, I know I should be shading with this, or I could highlight with this, or I can mix with this. The fact that I can't see it means that when I actually apply that paint to my palette and start trying to mix it all up, I have no idea if I'm getting the right color. It could be too much blue in it, it could have too much red in it, or green, but I can't really tell. I'll hold it up to my miniature, to whatever I'm painting, and I'll think, yep, that's getting really close, it's just a little bit lighter. Excellent. I'll go with that. That looks brilliant. And it turns out, well, it's actually way too green. So the transition I'm creating is completely stuffed. That's why myself and a lot of miniature painters that I know use a recipe. They use, a series of colors that has already been tried and tested by other people. And who do we have here? We've got Jordan, is it?
Jody.
And Jody. I couldn't read it properly. 1 second. And I'm back to saying good morning to people. Here in Australia, it is 9:30 and we've got people just starting to wake up. Alright, I have no idea what I was just saying. I'm just looking at what I'm painting here and already it's looking quite ghastly. Okay. That's fine. I'm trying to teach myself non-metallic metal and it's proving to be quite difficult. Sorry, give me 1 moment. Alright, I have no idea what I was just saying. Alright. I know that some people who are colorblind when it comes to mixing use, I believe it's a closed palette technique. They align a series of dots of the colors that they want, and then they're going to mix from. Try doing that. Doesn't work for me. I really heavily stick to having recipes. Everything I've got is a recipe. Every paint set that I get, or every time I want effects, I look it up. I find other people's. I find tutorials. I go out and I buy those exact 4, 5, 3 paints that they use to get the effect that they wanted. Unfortunately, can be pretty uncreative, unadventurous, and very much unoriginal. Looks good, but I'm never going to be an award-winning painter. I know that for a fact. For example, I had a look at, I think it was heavy metal. No, that's right. It was one of the speed painting competitions for at Salute, and they were using a short series of paints. I couldn't do that. They only had 5, 6 paints, I think it was, or something like that. They had their scale 75 set, and that's what they had to work with. So they had to mix their own paints on the fly. I can't do that. Whatever I end up painting will definitely turn out ghastly. I wish I had been more prepared and woken up early. Unfortunately, I slept in, but somewhere in my house, I have some of the miniatures I painted when I was 15. Back when I only had, I think, 7 or 8 paints because I had no money. You know, I didn't have a job because I was 16 in the middle of nowhere up in the bush. And hopefully I'll find them later today after we're done here. I'll put up some photos in the Hobby Hangout group and also Colourwise, the group that myself and Shoshi run. And we'll be able to see some of the issues that I had when I was younger. Trying to mix my own paints and, for example, trying to mix a green for an orc was near impossible. It would always end up being a very muddy brown. Excuse me. I'm wondering if I can salvage what I'm trying to paint. Growing up in the country, unfortunately, there's not a lot to do. So I turned to miniature painting, and I realized at a very early stage that what I was trying to paint and what I thought was being, really good, at the end of the day, looked terrible, absolutely terrible. So I turned to creating terrain because dry brushing was easy, and I could just use whatever came from my mum's shed to try and get what I wanted. Much, much easier. And after I lost my miniatures, I quit. I cracked it. I was not going to go back to trying to paint. I've only recently, in the last, I think, 8 months or something, or less, not sure, started painting again. Actually taking it a bit seriously, trying to learn. And being colorblind has really posed some serious issues because I don't know what I'm producing, and it's really difficult because we feel isolated and alone because it is something that it affects a small percentage of people, and not just that, but everyone seems to have a different way of seeing the colors. You know, one person's red receptors might be more powerful than the next person's. Some person might have slightly dulled green receptor as well as a slightly dulled red receptor. So all of their blues are really nice and vibrant, but they have difficulty seeing both red and green because it's dulled. And because everyone has something different in the way that they see color, these apps that you can get on iPhone and Android, they're helpful for people to kind of understand what it's like to be colorblind, because you can take a photo of a miniature and have a look and go, okay, well, you know, this is dull. This doesn't look like a nice purple. This doesn't look like a nice orange or whatever the color may be. But the problem is, it's never going to be what whatever person you're talking to or whatever. It's not going to be what they see. That's just how it is. Because everyone's receptors are different. Everyone's vision is different, and so trying to get help as a miniature painter who's colorblind can be really difficult because other people can't see what you can see. That's where having these recipes are really helpful. Or when you're talking to another painter, having them explain things in terms of bottles of paint. And okay, well, if you go with, let's have a look. If you go with Blair Game Color Stormy Blue and highlight it with Ultramarine Blue by Vallejo, it's so much easier for us to understand because it's there. We know that color, whether we can see it or not, we know that it's correct to what that person is trying to tell us, at least. Hopefully they're not colorblind and getting it wrong as well, but not being able to understand what people are trying to explain to us can be really difficult because a lot of miniature painters or war gamers won't touch painting, or they'll give it a really crappy tabletop standard. Even then, not a great tabletop standard because they know that they're going to fail, or they feel that they're going to fail. So if you do start talking to someone who is colorblind, which I completely encourage, just remember to try and be specific, because that's what we can understand. We know that if you're talking about this color and we go out and we buy that color, it's going to be that color. Unless somehow they stick the wrong label on the bottle, then, well, we're stuffed. And there goes a whole miniature or a whole bottle of paint. We won't even know. 1 second. Sorry about that. And one thing that a lot of people who are color efficient don't understand, in the fact that, we've got someone who's just joined. Welcome, Adam. I can see a whole bunch of minis.
How's it going, man? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome.
Sorry, what was that, mate? You're very, very quiet.
Is that better?
A bit better, yeah. 1 second. What time is it there for you?
About 28.
Unfortunately, I can't tell how many people are watching or whatnot. Apparently, there's 4. So I've been essentially talking to myself. If you've got any questions, just shout out. At this stage, it's just you and I.
All right, brother. What are you working on?
Currently, I'm trying to teach myself non-metallic metal for the axe head on my what's it called, Warborn Skinwalker or whatever it is from Hordes.
Nice, man.
No idea how well I'm going though. Trying to use some blue tones and grey, and well, I have difficulty seeing blue. I can see it and I can tell it's blue, but my transitions and stuff I'm struggling with when I start adding the grey. So we will see how well it turns out in the end. Just in the middle of explaining what some of us colourblind people struggle with when it comes to talking to other painters and having other painters explain a colour or how we can achieve an effect by mixing colour, especially because we don't see the colour, we don't understand what the hell they're talking about half the time, and how the best way to talk to someone who is colourblind when it comes to their painting is just to speak very specifically. Using ratios is amazing because we can understand that. We can understand, okay, 3 drops of, I don't know, 3 drops of Vallejo orange fire and 4 drops of something else. Though we won't be able to get an amazing looking mix. We won't be able to mix it nearly as well because our ratios will be probably off. Everyone mixes on the fly. Notice they'll go, okay, well I know I need a little bit of this and I need a little bit of that. Well, I'll tinker with it until I've got the right colour for what I'm going for. In Colourwise, I can't really do that because I don't know how it's going to turn out. Speaking with ratios and being specific with what colour you're talking about helps so much because I can go out, I can buy that exact paint, I can buy that exact brand, that exact name, and I know that it's going to be the colour that you're talking about. Without those colour names, if I try to mix whatever colour it may be, I know I'm not going to be able to do it. I know that I'm going to struggle. I'm not going to be able to get what colour you're talking about. You know, what kind of green or brown for that tree or for the trim of a cloak. So I work in recipes and ratios. I'm trying to teach myself colour theory, though it's proving very difficult because of the fact that half of it I can't tell what the hell I'm looking at. I know that I'm meant to be painting a purple, and I half guess, half educated guess. And unfortunately, with these, you know, these pre-mixed paints, I can't be very adventurous. I'm very, very safe. I know that many other colourblind painters are very safe with what they do. Because we will, if we screw it up, we've got to strip the whole thing. And half the time, we won't even know until we're out and about. We go to field those minis, we go to play a game, and someone points it out. Oh, why did you go with that colour? And it's flat out embarrassing. Especially if it's something that you've worked on for days on end and are extremely proud of. And then it turns out you've highlighted curry poo brown with orange, like what happened to me when I was younger. It's pretty devastating, and you just end up giving up.
What do you find is the best approach? Like, have you worked it out where you have like a system for feedback, or is it just you're very, very use the same recipe over and over?
90% of the time, I use the same recipe over and over and over. All of my reds start with a base of. I mostly work with Citadel colors, just because well, when I first started, that was the one that I knew and was comfortable with. For my reds, for example, all started with Horn Red as a base, then Mephiston Red, Evil Sun Scarlet, and that was really it. I finally got adventurous and bought an orange. I've got one orange, Vallejo Orange Fire. That's it. Because I know that those reds that I've copied from someone else's tutorial or whatever it is, I know that that's going to be this particular type of red, this dark red or this vibrant red or whatever color it is. So I find myself being very, very safe. I know that a lot of other painters in the group that I'm running also stick to recipes to be safe, but I'm trying to learn to be adventurous, and thankfully I got a very supportive partner, who I go, well, what do you think of this? And she'll go, oh, well, why have you painted it this color, or what are you going for with this? And I can adjust it as I go, and that's why I created the group that I've created, because though we all see different things, we all understand the issue that we all face, and we can all give feedback and unbiased feedback. You know, everyone knows that it's difficult and it's scary putting your art up when some people might cut you down because you screwed it up. But I find that yes, I tend to stick within the safe areas, colour between the lines, you could say. So 1 second. Alright, sorry about that.
No problem.
I don't really know what else to say. I've gone over quite a bit. Find it really difficult being colourblind outside of painting as well. I know that there's a lot of things that out in the world that I just don't see, or I struggle to see. For example, my partner's favourite story. We were looking for a computer. She wanted a new laptop, so we were looking on the internet and she was watching a video of some laptop that came with coloured cases and stuff like that. Her favourite colour is green, one of the colours that I struggle to see. We were sitting watching the video. She's like, oh, I really wish there was a green one. I really love green. Like, oh, there was a green. Why don't you get the green one? Like, what green? So we started arguing. We started arguing about whether there was a green one or not. We ended up slowing down this video to frame to find the green one. Finally spotting it. There, the goddamn green one. There, that one. And at this point we're screaming at each other. And she turns around in a very calm little voice and goes, Morgan, that's orange. And we just spent nearly 40 minutes arguing over whether there was a green one or not. And it turned out it was orange. To me, it was a really nice lime green, not this horrible orange colour that she could see.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I had an argument whether or not a dress was purple or mauve with someone, and it was a very interesting argument. In the end, I was right. The tag said it was mauve, but they never would admit that I was right.
See, I know the word mauve, I know the word teal, and all of these things. to me, that is a non-existent color. You could put it in front of me, I will see it. It's not like I just see grey. I don't know what I'm looking at. But in my mind, when it comes to these colors, that is a non-existent color because I simply can't see it. I will guess that it is a pink or a purple or whatever, but if you wanted specific names, there's no way that's ever going to happen. I just don't know what I'm looking at.
Have you used like color wheels to like kind of understand where they sit on the color wheel, or does that not work at all for you?
I've tried to do that. It can be difficult and frustrating, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Especially the more complex color wheels that really breaks down color. That can also be really frustrating because I'll be trying to find it on this spectrum of color, and because I don't know what I'm looking at, I struggle to find a match for it.
Yeah.
I've got one of these ones, the pocket color wheels.
Yeah.
That's kind of handy.
Yeah.
But again, because it just says, orange, yellow, it's really difficult because I have to basically find a color that I know is definitely a yellow that's close to this, or definitely a green that's close to this green, and then I can use it. Then I can apply that color theory if I know that I've got the closest I can get. But the problem with mini paints, to my understanding, is it's really difficult to find one that is close to those primaries. So it can be challenging trying to use a color wheel.
Yeah, I think a lot of really good painters try to go back to primaries and and then build off of them, but you're right. It's hard to find a good set of primary colors in mini painting because the reds have to shift into magenta and the blues are not really. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, it can be a real struggle because without those primaries, I'm always going to struggle to mix. I could follow along with color theory if we had those primaries available. But the
Maybe
fact that
that's
we don't really have it.
maybe that's a good place to start though. Yeah,
Mm,
you're right. It's hard to find them, but yeah, that would probably give you a good. But the other thing is once you start mixing primaries, like you'll never put the same amount of yellow and blue together to get halfway down to green, halfway in between. So it's kind of because the yellow is much lighter. Yeah, that gets trickier also.
yeah, that's why ratios seem to be a really helpful thing for people who are colorblind, as though we won't ever be able to get exact. It's just not going to happen. And I know that even people who are color efficient will still struggle to get close to exactly what they're after every time. The issue with us is color efficient people can work with it. They can roll with that. They can adapt the next coat of paint to factor that stuff in. Whereas I can't really do that.
Yeah.
Without knowing what the hell I'm looking at. It's really difficult to try and adapt to what needs to be adjusted. And I can hear the cat going crazy. We've just built him a box fort, and he's loving it. Absolutely love it. He never used to be into boxes, and now he's turned into a crazy box cat. Yeah, not being able to adjust on the fly can be very difficult for us because we might think, oh, well, that's really too far into this color spectrum. So we try to adjust and counteract that, we might be going in the completely wrong direction. We might turn that color into something that's nowhere near the effect that we wanted to go for. So a lot of us stick to recipes. I know that some people don't. Good on them. I find that really inspiring, and that's why I've been trying to branch out and learn more color theory. But for me at this stage, yeah, it's recipes all the way. Because it's safe. I know that I'm
Yeah.
going to get what I want to get, and it's kind of frustrating because when I was younger, my dream was to be a world famous miniature painter. That's what I
Yeah.
wanted to be in early primary school. When I first, got given a box of Eldar, um, and a couple of White Dwarf issues, but very early on I realised, well, that's probably never going to happen unless someone comes out with some amazing piece of technology, um, which they have. They've brought out Incroma have brought out those color corrective glasses, but I don't own a pair. I don't know anyone who owns a pair. They are extremely expensive for what they are, and they're designed, to my understanding, for outdoor use with working and that kind of thing. So I don't know anyone who's even got a chance to trial them in an indoor setting, looking at miniatures, and the cat's going crazy. So until then, I'm not gonna buy a pair at this stage because, well, I don't know if it's gonna work for me or not. And there's something like $400 US, something like that, and that's just an amount of money that I just do not have. Much rather spend that on paint, and I just stuffed up.
One technique I like is I shade the model like with just black and white shading, and then I wash it with like a color wash, and I'll use like 2 or 3 different color washes, different areas of the model, and that'll actually get me like something that's not terrible for how it looks.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not the most amazing paint job, but it probably ends up looking pretty decent because the washes are actually really good now from GW. So
Yeah.
you can really kind of cheat almost with that, like a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been trying to teach myself glazing and stuff like that and mixing, but it's not an easy adventure. But slowly getting there. Just be really, I don't know, daunting and scary trying to branch out into these alien things. Because unfortunately, I just don't see it. I read all of this stuff that other people post. Of, they added this color to this color, and unless it's being specific, saying I added X brand to this, then I'm lost. I have no idea what I'm bloody looking at, and that can be really disheartening. I quit anything to do with wargaming and miniatures for Christ, nearly 8 or 9 years, something like that. Yeah, 8 years, and didn't pick it up again at all. I just didn't want to have anything to do with it. I was that done. It was a bit heartbreaking, really. For a very, very long time, that's all I wanted to do. That's what I did every weekend, is paint, build terrain, play, and to feel like you're never going to get there is quite hard. So I hope that I can at least one day be decent enough that other young painters, whether it's any form of medium really, not necessarily miniature painting. Hopefully, with this group that we've started and are starting to run, hopefully some young guys out there, or even some young women, though it's very rare, can realize, oh well, no, they can still do it. It just takes a little bit more dedication and a little bit more practice. But the main difficulty that I find that is when you're young, starting out with anything, and you realize that you're colorblind, or your parents realize you're colorblind, the world doesn't seem to have any form of infrastructure to support that. Teachers don't understand it unless they're a male teacher who's colorblind themselves. Then they may understand it, but it's unlikely that they're going to be teaching art class. And because of that difficulty, I failed many art projects in early high school, early primary school because of the fact that I didn't know the color that I was using. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was following along well, and no, it looked terrible. But I couldn't tell. So I get frustrated and rip up my art projects. But
I was
hopefully,
never a great
things
artist.
like, pardon?
I was never a great artist.
I'm decent at drawing and stuff like that, but it's just, I don't know, you get so frustrated. You paint something for days on end, and then have one person question the color that you've used on it, and it's all in the bin.
Some of these are really good though. Like you've obviously got like come a long way on some of them, right? Like
Oh yeah.
you gotta have the right mini, and then you gotta take it all the way. But like some of these are really good. So obviously you've got some. You've figured out some ways to get around these. So you figured a recipe approach is the best approach?
It is the safest approach. I wouldn't say
Right.
it's the best. I know that other people have other methods. But for me, it's the safest approach. I know that if I use this series of colors, I know that I'm going to get the effect that this other person achieved. If I know that they had a really nice, royal purple cloak on one of their, I don't know, Space Marine captains, for example, or on their warcaster, I know that if I follow that recipe, that's the color that I'll get. It will look a little bit different because my technique might be different, or
Mm-hmm.
the way or where I apply the colors will be different. But I know that the high points will look like those high points. I know that those shadows will look like my shadows. And I just find that for me, that's the safest because I can look at my source material of where I've pinched that recipe from, and I know that that's what I'm going for. That's what I'll achieve.
Yeah.
But with that said, I know that there are people out there that approach things very differently. Unfortunately, I can't really speak for them because I don't use those other methods. I do get adventurous every now and then and try to mix or blend colors that I don't really know what I'm looking at. But it can turn out alright. I find that the only real way to learn is to jump in the deep end. To really just jump in the deep end and hope for the best.
Yeah, for
Every
sure.
miniature I paint I approach every single one completely differently. Because I've got nothing to lose. I'm not, I'm not a commission painter. I'm not painting competition pieces. I'm not even painting for a friend or for my brother who constantly harasses me to do so. These are just all my miniatures, and I know I've got that many. I've got about 400. I've only painted 30. I know that I got nothing to lose. I don't need to batch paint. I don't play. I just don't have the time. I work 12-hour days. So I just try to paint everyone completely differently, use a whole new set of techniques, a whole new set of colours. And I go looking through forums, or I go and look at YouTube videos. For example, my YouTube miniature painting list, or playlist, I've got up to nearly 4,000 videos now saved on that playlist, because I go through it, I watch it while I'm painting, and steal. I feel bad pinching everyone else's way of doing everything, but I gotta do what I can do. It's that simple.
What's
Give me
your
one second.
what's your process like for what part of the miniature? What do you do first? Do you do like the shading first, or do you do like the like you start black and white, and then, or do you start with just like white? And
Um, Usually I just prime everything black.
okay,
Because I know that black, yes, it dulls down all the colours. But I know that it's not going to affect the colours so much that it may have something unintended. I might be completely wrong that that's not going to happen with white. I don't know. But for me, when I put black down and then a colour over the top, it's usually just a little bit darker than what is in the bottle or comes out of the bottle. And I find for me that's the best way to go about it, because I know that when it turns out brighter to my eyes, depending on what the colour is, it can be different. I could lay down a nice purple, for example. I keep using purple because I struggle a lot with reds
yeah,
rather than greens. And purples is a colour that I struggle with. I love the colour purple, but I struggle with it so much. And I
yeah,
know that if I lay down a nice purple colour, it might be one colour, but then when it's on the white, I look at it and it's different.
yeah.
It's a different colour to me. I might lay down a nice royal purple, and when it hits the white, it looks pink. So I usually stick with black. However, with that said, um, with every single miniature, I try to do everything completely differently. So I've now just started learning glazing, and so along with that, I've just started using zenithal highlighting or pre-shading, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, and yeah, so far I think it's working out really, really well. I don't know if I posted any photos recently of this skinwalker, but I will do soon. Um, and
Yeah, I see a
I think
picture
it's
of him.
looking really good. Yeah, yeah, that's right. I have posted photos. I think he's looking really good. Um, though it's a really different process for me. Normally, like I've only recently worked out how to thin paint properly,
Hmm.
to be honest. You know, I am really new to miniature painting. Like this guy is number 32. Other than the ones that I painted when I was like 15,
Hmm.
which I don't count those because for a long time there I was working off 4 GW paints. That was it, and then some house paint, and then some oil paints. And so the stuff that I would get was all sorts of weird.
Hmm.
I would regularly accidentally melt miniatures. I remember trying to, someone had told me about priming. So I tried to prime a bunch of Eldar with standard $2 shop spray paint. Don't try it. I melted a whole army, basically. Whole lot got melted.
So
Sorry,
this
one second.
non-metal metal you're doing, is it you're using blues? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm using blues. Just getting messages from people. Yeah, using blues. I'm using Vallejo Stormy Blue, Ultramarine Blue, and some greys. I don't really know how it's turning out. Oh, grey and black, sorry, I should say. I can see the blue. I can see what I'm going for. I don't think I'm making a very good effect, though.
It's hard
We
no
will see.
matter. Yeah, but that's good to stick to one color because that's really all it needs. Most
Mm,
metals are basically just gray and blue.
yeah. So I'm trying to learn it. It is my first attempt really ever trying to apply it. I understand the theory, but as one of my friends Thornley pointed out, I picked the worst, absolute worst surface to try and learn non-metallic metal on. I normally stick with true metallic, because again, simpler, less adventurous. I can just grab those paints off a shelf and I know it's going to be fine. Rather than trying to mix or color things nicely. We will see. If I screw it up, I'll just start again like I've already done once. I've already
And
stripped it once and
I don't even,
yeah.
I don't even go there. It's too much. It's I just shade my metallics with glazes.
hmm Yeah, I usually just use like Games Workshop washes and then maybe some lighter colors, and that's really it. it's it's difficult because I would like to be more adventurous. So I'd like to see what I can come up with, what I could do. But I've got to work within my limitations, and if I want something that looks good, I got to try and work with either preset ratios of color or recipes for an effect. Because I've seen what I can come up with when I don't do that, and it is bad. It's really bad. And the problem is, if I'm talking to someone about it, 90% of the time, they don't understand what it's like to be colorblind. So they won't talk in the way that I can understand. They won't explain a color in a way that I can understand. They won't explain these things. And so every time I talk to someone new or whatever, I try to encourage them to talk to someone who's colorblind with brand names, numbers, that kind of thing, so we can fully understand. Okay, well, I know that they said this color. I will go buy that color, and from there, I find that I can be a little bit more adventurous. Because okay, well, I know that this is this color that they were talking about. Okay, well, I know that this bottle is an orange. I know that this is a dark orange. I've been told it's a dark orange. It says it's a dark orange, whatever it is. And then I can go, okay, well, I want this to happen, and I can kind of understand this section of color theory. Okay, I'll add this to that, and then I'll see how it comes out. oh yeah, it looks good. So with that brand name starting point, then I can be a bit more adventurous, but without it, well, it's hard. There's no way I could go from primaries to a good effect color. No way in hell.
Do the brand like do the paints do they put out like charts that help to? Is there anything like that, or is it pretty much just based on what people have done in tutorials and stuff like that?
Well, um, I don't know too much about P3, for example, or any of the other brands, because as I said, I've mostly always worked with Games Workshop because that's where I started and where I was comfortable.
Yeah.
But I know that, for example, Games Workshop produce a lot of paint guides and stuff like that for their miniatures. And thankfully, it's because they are trying to simplify things a little bit to recapture their glory days and drag in some younger people back to the hobby. Some of the
Yeah.
painting guides are really basic, really basic. 3 colors, 4 colors, that's it. Um, for one particular spot or effect or whatever it is. And they're actually fairly helpful because it at least gives me a base starting point. I can try to make it a little bit more complex and be a bit more adventurous, but it gives me that start point, which is always good. And go, okay, well, that's what they have for this color. Now I can try adding these, get something different.
So does it help when it's like a very clear tutorial about one part of the miniature and it sticks to that part? Does that kind of help?
I find, yeah, I find that does help because I can just focus on that one section instead of jumping between, painting his face and doing your second layer and then jumping to a shoulder pad.
There's a lot
Much
of
easier because I can focus.
there's been a lot more YouTube lately. Like, do you find those tutorials are better, or do you find it's better like in a book where it's clearly laid out in writing?
I prefer a book,
Yeah.
though I've only got one book. That's it, and I don't even use that yet because I haven't bought an airbrush yet. Um, been looking into it, thinking about getting even more adventurous than I already have been. Um, so once I get an airbrush, I'll start using that book. Because airbrushing is quite heavily used in that one, but I prefer to read it. Though with that said, I've got a playlist of about 4,000 videos
Right.
um, that I've saved. Some of them I can't really follow along with, to be honest,
Mm.
because a bit complex or whatever it is. So I
Yeah.
don't really follow along, but I try to. And I try to record what I can. Um, Thankfully, recipes and whatnot are usually pretty simplistic. Um, so usually, you start with a base color and you have a shade, first couple of layers, highlights, that kind of thing. Um, so I know that if I want to drag it out, basically, then I can add, 2 parts of this to that color to fill in the gaps and have more in between colors to get from point A to point B, if that makes any sense. But it's good because though it's very simplistic using these recipes and whatnot, and the fact that it's safe is good. You know that nearly 90% of the time, or more, you're going to get what you want. It's not going to be a prize-winning paint job, but it will look good. It'll look as intended, and that's the key point. You know, trying to get things looking how we intend for them to look is part of the hardest part of all of it. Alright, give me 1 second.
Do you find it's helpful when it's a certain steps that are in the tutorial, or do you find it's kind of doesn't really matter? Or is there certain things you're looking for in that tutorial that make it valuable or make it easier to pick up or to
Sorry.
reuse?
Sorry, say that again. I zoned off. I was answering like 4 questions at once.
That's fine. Do you find it's more useful when there's certain steps laid out in a tutorial or the recipe? Is there certain steps you look for that make it a good tutorial for you, or is it not really matter?
For me, what makes a good tutorial is being specific of what color. Like, you know, holding up to the bloody camera, you know, this is bloody Abaddon black, and then I use 2 drops of that with this color. That to me is what I look for. Because
So the exact
if I can't,
amounts.
pardon?
So the exact amounts.
Exact amounts are helpful. It doesn't need to be exact. When you're mixing anything beyond 2 colors, you need exact amounts. I need, you know, the ratio for anything beyond 2 colors. Hang on,
Has there been any brand of tutorial that you find to be more useful? Like any place, like a certain YouTube channel, or
my favorite YouTube channel when it comes to miniature painting, currently, well, not currently, but it's always been anything by, I can't remember his last name, Chris, who does the mini wargaming stuff,
yeah,
the
Chris,
quick tips. Can't
yeah.
remember his last name, unfortunately. His are great because those quick tips usually only work with a few colors. That's it. Minimal mixing, really straightforward. And though it's a quick tip, it lives up to its namesake. Um, it's really good for me because I can go, okay, cool, I'll write this down. In fact, that's where I got how to do all of my reds came from a video that he put up that had reds. And so I copy it every time. Every single time I use that same method of doing red. I might get adventurous and chuck in an orange or a little bit of yellow or whatever, but the 3, 4 main colors that I use, always the same. Always the same. Unfortunately, it's how I've got to do it. I'm trying to get more adventurous by going out and buying other brands of paint. But it's difficult and it's a bit daunting and, well, it's scary really. If I don't have a ratio for it, I don't know what I'm going to get.
So Mini Wargaming's a good one.
Yeah, there's quite a few good ones out there. Soon on the Colourwise group, I might be putting up a link to that playlist I've created It's got all sorts of stuff in there. But yeah, that would definitely be one of my favorites. What's another good one that I like? God, there's a bit too many. I've tried following along with is it Beast of War? 3 colors up,
Hmm.
something like that. I've tried following along. Can't do it. And I've really tried. When I say I've tried, I really tried to follow along with what that guy was saying about colors and color theory, but somewhere along the lines, I always get lost and well, kind of give up. Great videos, mind you. It's just I can't do it, and it is disheartening at the best of times.
Have you looked at like the painting Buddha? It's like what I would say like probably the top painting video. Have you seen
That
those?
was Thank you. That's one of the other ones I was thinking of. Painting Buddha, I really like as well.
They work a lot in Vallejo, but they're pretty good at putting down what they're using.
Exactly. That's what I like. I like it when they can be as specific as possible with what color they're using, even if they don't put down ratios or anything like that. If they're using mixing 2 colors, it's automatically, if they've got the information on there, basically, it's automatically a good tutorial for me. That's a plus. Because I can buy that paint and know that it's right. And if I can do that, then from that spot, like I know, okay, well they were painting fire. I know that I can do normal fire. I know that I can do fire effects or fire paint jobs on the side of a tank. And because I've got that basic information, I can then get a little bit more adventurous from there. It gives me a great start point, really. And then I can start to mix a little from that point. I got about 10 messages, comments, and texts. Give me one
So that's
second.
good. I'm just feeding you questions so you can, cut it all together afterwards on YouTube. No one wants to hear my opinion. Do you find it's hard to get really high-end critique from really good painters?
Alright, 1 second.
Yeah. Tell me when you're ready.
Yeah, we've got a few other people watching, but I can't
Yeah, no, that's
see.
great.
I'm just checking through comments on some of the threads to see what people are saying or if any questions are popping up, that kind of thing. Okay, looks like I'm up to date. It's a bit difficult with whatever the hell is going on. Not being able to see who's watching or have anyone else chime in. So it's good that you've joined, because it would have been however long of me just talking to myself, and I would have run out of stuff to say.
It's good. I'll just feed you
Pretty quickly.
questions.
What was your last question before I zoned off?
So do you do you find that there's like good high-level critique available, or do you find that it's hard to get feedback from like people that would be like judging competitions, for example, or someone like that?
I with the group that myself, Choshi, Trent, and Michael have been running. There's some people in there, and if any of them watch this or are watching this, nothing bad about any of them. They're all amazing people, all different people from different backgrounds, difficulties. We've even got a guy in there with he's suffered from MS and now has a blind spot in one of his eyes. So he's not colorblind, but he's got a vision impairment that he struggles with his painting. So everyone's very supportive. I can find it difficult in that group to get really gritty criticism. A lot of compliments, which is great. I just find it difficult because some people don't go that in depth with what works, what doesn't, what looks like crap. You know, but there are people there as well who go really in depth and try to help, especially because we do have color efficient people in that group as well. It's not just for people with color blindness, because, well, what would be the use of having a whole bunch of people who can't see color trying to help each other with color?
Mm-hmm.
It just wouldn't work. So it's great. We do have some really good color efficient people, and I get feedback off my partner. I get feedback off the group. I get feedback off Shoshi. I find really helpful because I'm quite close with her. So she gives me really good feedback on what's going on. But because I'm not just painting this because I love painting. I want to learn everything I can. Um, Ideally, one day I would like to be able to put something into a competition and get some really good feedback. But at this stage, I haven't done that. Haven't been brave enough. But this mini that I'm working on at this very moment, I'm hoping I can get him finished in time to enter him in the competition that's being held by Heavy Metal, the Ed Bangers, I think it is. Not because I think I'll win, not because I want to win, but all I want is really good feedback and not taking into account that I'm colorblind. Because what a lot of people don't understand is when we're painting, we want things to still look normal. We're not going to paint and have some wild orange tree. We don't want that. We may not see the color. We may not understand what the color is or how that color works, but we want it to still look realistic, not weird and cartoony.
Yeah.
I'm hoping I can get some unbiased feedback where they don't know that I'm colorblind and that's not taken into account at all, so that I can find out what works, what doesn't, what I've done right, what I've done wrong. So hopefully I can get at least this guy done in time. I would like to put a few guys up in that competition just to get feedback on what I'm doing. So hopefully. But for the most part, I find most feedback that I get is just compliments, and which is great. I like that people do like what I'm doing. I do like the fact that I'm learning this stuff and doing well at learning. But the grittier, um, the critique, the better I find. Because I'm not, though it does make me feel good having people compliment what I'm doing. I'm not really interested in a pat on the back. I want harshness in my feedback. I want people to be upfront and tell me, no, that looked really, really bad. You know, you've stuffed up the colours, or you've stuffed up this effect, because that way I can go back and go, okay, well, they've told me that these colours didn't work for this reason. This recipe doesn't work for what I'm going for. I can change the recipe. I'll find a different recipe or a different paint. But at this stage, no, I haven't. I haven't put anything up for any kind of competition or anything like that, or I've never spoken to anyone who has been a judge at anything, purely because I don't know anyone. I'm not a commission painter, not a competition painter. Until this group that I started creating or hosting or whatever you want to put it, I was a nobody just working at my desk. I still am a nobody just working at my desk. So hopefully I can meet some people out there who have judged or understanding or have an understanding of the judging process, who can tell me what works, what doesn't, what needs to be improved. So I try to look for other people's work that they have been told what worked for them. And then I look at what's worked and try and find out what the judge was talking about when they told them, like in the case of Spud, who just put up a photo of one of his minis that got judged, why it didn't work with his mid-tone or whatever. I don't see what they're talking about. The mid-tone to me, it's all one colour with a little bit of brighter spot. But I don't know. Slowly getting there. I think I've stuffed up with this metal again, but that's fine. I'm so sick of it.
It's not fun to paint that kind of metal.
No, it's not, but my blues are way too heavy. I need to dull it back down with some greys. I will be back in 2 minutes at the most. Just gotta go out, answer a question my partner's asked me.
Alright.
Sorry about that. Just had to update the family on what's going on. To all the other people that are watching, if you want to just shoot me a message via Facebook if you've got any questions, that would be excellent, and I'll answer what I can. That way, poor Adam doesn't have to ask all of them. It is about 10:43 my time currently, and I'm probably going to have to move on at about 11:30. So about another 45 minutes or so.
Hey, I'm here. I just was getting something I sprayed outside.
Yeah, too easy. Just saying that it's about 10:45 here, and I'm probably going to have to move on at about 11:30.
Yeah.
So I got a lot to do. I'm working flat out lately. 12-hour days. It's pretty killer. I've got a lot of stuff to do around the house because International Tabletop Days coming up, and we haven't done a big clean in some time. I need to get off my butt and clean the house properly. Apparently someone's asked a question in the chat, but the chat's not displaying for me for some reason. There we go. Alright. Question is, do people in your situation tend to stress about or shy away from painting competitions? If so, what could the community do to help with that? To my understanding, most people that I've met do tend to shy away from competitions, especially because some of us don't know how well what it is that we're painting has turned out. So we don't feel like being adventurous. We're afraid of bad criticism or embarrassing ourselves. I'm probably wrong. There may be people out there that I have met and I just haven't heard about competitions they've entered. But from those that I do know, I don't really know of anyone that's actually done competitions. I'm sure that some of them have in the past, but not that I know of. I think the best way that the community could help is probably to realize that there are many, many colorblind miniature painters out there. My little group of 150 people, not all of them are colorblind, but it's 8% of all men are colorblind. So there is lots out there, and I think when asking someone, why did you do this, or how did you come to this color or effect or whatever, I think the real thing that really needs to be taken into account is just the way that we present the questions to each other. Because that person that you ask or you critique, you may not know if they're colorblind or not. And if you are too harsh with them straight off the bat, you might scare them away for good. You don't know. Because you don't know their history, you don't know their background, and they haven't been upfront with the fact of, hey, I'm colorblind, look at what I did. They may take it the wrong way, they might take it a bit too harshly, though you may mean for it to be just a positive critique. So I just think talking with each other with a lot of respect and with that in mind could help. Um, but it's a bit difficult because the world that we live in doesn't really have a way to cater to colorblindness. It's a thing that goes pretty well unnoticed. There's not a lot of understanding out there because it's not something that is life crippling. It is not something that you can't do, uh, you know, certain things because of it. I know that you can't become a pilot. That's about it. But most other things in this world you can do with being colorblind. It will just be more difficult, more of a struggle. Um, may take extra study and practice for you to actually understand what's going on in front of you. For example, for me, I'm very green deficient. I struggle when driving a car um, because of the fact that the lights are usually red, green, and amber. I don't see the amber when it changes. I don't see the red when it changes. So when I'm approaching um, lights at an intersection, I have to look at the lights. I can't look at the road all that much. I have to try to multitask between looking at the road, look at the lights, look at the road, because if it changes suddenly, I won't notice it and I'll go straight through that intersection, which has happened once before. So it's very difficult because this impairment, it's not life-threatening, it is not life-crippling. You can still do anything. Like, look at me, I'm learning to be a better miniature painter every single day, and half the colours I'm looking at, I don't know what it is. Anything within the purple spectrum, I struggle with. Anything that's blue-green, blue-green to me isn't a thing. It's like, pick one. You are blue or you are green. Pick one. But I'm doing it. I'm learning. I'm I'm not amazing. I'm not an award-winning painter or anything like that. But I'm learning it. I'm doing it. I'm enjoying it every day. Well, every day that I get to paint, I'm not at work. But I think those people out there that struggle with it need to be more vocal. Be upfront with the fact that, oh yeah, I'm colorblind, look what I did. Those people who aren't colorblind and are giving a critique just need to take into account the fact that they are colorblind. That color that they may have used might look wrong to you, but it might look right to them for what they're trying to get. So just approaching things, I don't know, softly. Not being harsh on each other out there when you're criticizing someone else's work, which I think is just a matter of respect anyway. They've put hours into this miniature, or however long, and just ripping them a new one because their tree doesn't look right. It's just rude. But I think being supportive of the fact that people are colorblind, people that out there aren't comfortable with going, hey, I'm colorblind, I think it just means that we need to be mindful of some people out there do suffer from it. I hope that answers your question. Probably not. I probably waffled on to the point where the question was completely lost. Because I have that effect. But I think that those out there that are colorblind, just, I always say, I like to jump in the deep end. I like to try new things. I like to try new ratios and colors and effects. Because there's information out there now that we're in this age of technology with the internet. You can find a recipe or a ratio somewhere. got to hope that what you have in mind of what you want to achieve is the same as what that person has achieved. Because if it's on a forum and they don't have photos, I avoid it. I want to know that they got the effect that I want to get before I go and grab those paints from a shop and apply it to my miniature that I've been working days on. Because without that information, well, it's probably going to turn out terribly. But the main thing that I think that the greater community can do for supporting miniature painters that are colourblind or suffer from any form of impairment, whether it be they have the shakes, they're blind in one eye, whatever it is. I think the main issue is just being supportive of each other and encouraging, while still giving down-to-earth criticism, being upfront with what works, what doesn't, but presented in a way that's not sounding rude or mean or cruel. And also just when you're talking about colour in general, where possible, being specific. Being specific about what colour you're using, or you're going to use, what you're going to be mixing with what. I think that for me helps the most. Just gonna check more bloody Facebook messages. Alright, I don't really know what else to say, to be perfectly honest with everyone. I hope that I've done a good job of breaking down what it can be like for people who are colourblind. It's very difficult because, as I've said, everyone's different. They'll see different colours differently. And that's, I think, the one thing that most people don't understand is that, you know, being red-green deficient doesn't mean that you can't see red or green. You can still see them. Most people can still see them who suffer from it. It's very uncommon to be colourblind where you don't see colour at all. Extremely rare. It does exist, but most people I talk to or have spoken to have it in their head that I paint in all greys, paint in grayscale. Well, no, I still see colour. I just simply don't know what I'm looking at half the time. Especially, you know, the pure colours like a green or a red, I do see them. I know that it's a green, I know that it's a red, and I you held up the paint to me and asked me what it is, I could tell you it's a green. But it's those tertiary colours, those mixes of colour, that I find most people struggle with the most because you can't see the red in it properly. The red is dulled, so this bright, you know, pink, for example, might be a completely different colour in my eyes than it will be to a colour efficient person. But with everyone having different issues with colour, my pink that I see will be completely different to the next person's pink that they see. And the person after that might not see pink at all. A lot of people don't understand that it can be really difficult because though we can all relate to being colorblind, we all see the world very differently. Right? It can be when you're younger. It can be a very isolating experience. Because the most it gets talked about is when, for example, when I was in art class in year 7, kids holding up different pens and going, "Oh, what's this color? What's this color? What's this color?" and hiding them under the table, and they couldn't understand why they would try to trick me, and they would pick up a pink, and they go, "What's this color?" I go, "Oh, it's pink." "Yes, good. Okay. What's this color?" "Oh, it's purple." "No, it's the same pencil I just held up." And they couldn't understand why I couldn't see it, because most of the time I'm operating on an educated guess. I know that this spectrum of color fits into this area in the color wheel, so I can make an educated guess. My brain can make an educated guess because my brain, the human brain, tries to fill in the gaps that we know are there, but we don't have the ability to see. It will make up a pink, basically. It knows that that's supposed to be a pink. I can't see the red in it or this color in it, so it'll try to compensate, but the brain's not going to get it right every single time. And the brain is an amazing thing, but it's not that damn good. Hopefully this metal that I'm attempting to do will turn out alright. It's very blue. Very, very blue. And I think I'm just going to move on and continue painting something else once it's done. I think I'm going to try to stick with true metallics from now on. Well, at least for these complex shapes. Going with a 5-pointed, 6-pointed axe as the first attempt at non-metallic metal is not a good idea. I don't recommend it to anyone. Alright, is there anyone else who is watching, or do you, Adam, have any other questions?
Yeah, sure. I am curious about your your steps in the non-metal that you were doing.
Oh, okay. I just put down a white primer and then went from what blue was it? Let me have a look at my bottles. Used a ultramarine blue glaze and moved towards a mix of ultramarine and stormy blue. And as I headed further towards the shadows, added more and more black. And then I've gone over it with a Dawnstone glaze, as well as Administratum Grey from Games Workshop. And now I've just done another glaze over the whole lot with Dawnstone. It was way too blue and I needed to mute some of it. And then I'm just picking out some of the highlights with a bright white, plain white, and trying to pick up those little edges and stuff to bring out the effect. So hopefully it turns out alright. But working on a 5-pointed, 6-pointed, or however many pointed bloody axe was not a good choice. Would have been a much better idea to do something like a sword, because that I could make it work quite nicely on a sword. But on what I'm working on, it's interesting.
Not an easy technique on any day of the week.
No, definitely, definitely not. But hopefully it turns out alright.
It sounds like you went through quite a few steps. When I get that far into something, I usually decide that I'm not going any further. If it's not good, move on to the next one.
Yeah, I should do that, but I don't know. Too determined to try and get it to look good. Though, I think it looks like crap right now. But I'll find a way to make it look decent. Somehow, anyway. Because I would like to enter this one for the heavy metal competition.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a winning piece, that's for sure. But I'd like to get some feedback, and hopefully I can make this look decent enough where the head of the axe is not the focus of the critique. Unfortunately, we haven't had a very good turnout today because it was a bit of a last minute decision to
No,
post this one up. But
it's really good. I think you should record them and then cut out like use the questions as just like, when you're actually giving like a lot of good advice, like cut that into. I don't know. Is your YouTube video like recording or is it just?
I believe that Brandon is recording this through.
Yeah, and then you can just cut it at the end, right? Because there's some really good information in it. I mean, no one really cares what I'm saying, but I mean, your advice is probably really good for some people.
For some people, hopefully they find it good. I know that other people find it extremely basic, but hopefully it's more debunking some of the myths and giving some people some understanding on what it can be like for someone in my position. And hopefully the fact that I'm giving it a good go at trying to become at least a half decent miniature painter. I hope that some, at least younger people out there, can stick with it, because I do know that there are plenty of people out there that just give up. There's a guy in our group who one of his locals at the store that he plays at, he has just got a completely primed army, and I think he said that he's put about 3 colours on the army. That's it, and nothing else, because he's colorblind and he's not prepared to jump in the deep end and give it a good go, because he knows that he's colorblind and he doesn't want to look like a fool or be embarrassed, whatever it is. Trent, who helps run the group, his partner's colorblind and is interested in wargaming and painting and stuff like that, but he still hasn't painted a single miniature because he's afraid of it not looking good. So hopefully, at least some people might feel a little bit inspired or feel a little bit more confident in what they're doing. Because hell, it's not hard to be a better painter than I am. So if I can do it, anyone can do it. Alright, well, I think that just about wraps it up, unless anyone wants to put up a last minute question in the chat or message me on Facebook with a last minute question. If not, I think I'll start wrapping it up. Alright, everybody, we're going to kill the live broadcast. But if you've been watching, thank you very much. If you've got any questions, you can either send me a message on Facebook or join the Colourwise group. Really easy to find. That's Colourwise with a U, by the way, if you go to search it. But you can ask me or anyone in that group any questions. We are all extremely willing to help out. You don't have to be colorblind to join or to ask me a question or anything like that. If you've got a friend or you just want to understand a little better than you already do, just send me a message anytime. If I'm not working, I will reply as soon as I can. So that's about it. I will probably do another one of these in the future. Thank you all again. Thanks, Adam, for joining me and shooting me some questions.
All right, man.
I'm going to kill it there.